Zeus, you're a great old dog. This is Zeus. Prince is out back, and this is their roadmap to success. I'm going to give you one more treat. Up, stay. You're supposed to stay in a sit. Stay. And then, freedom. That time I didn't have to say the okay word. All right, so in this video, we're going to go over all the little tips and tricks that I shared during this in-home dog behavior training session. So we started off by asking some questions about the dogs and the dog's day-to-day routine. The guardians in this house actually do a really good job. Most of my clients, their dogs have almost no exercise, they have no rules, and they get to tell the humans when to pet them, which confuses the dog into thinking they have more authority than the humans do. In this house, the dogs get good exercise. The guardians do a really good job. They have most of the rules that I would suggest to my clients they already had in place. I added a couple little additions to it, like sitting on both sides of the door and some things like that. But those are good signs, and it shows that the guardians actually put forth a lot of effort to provide good structure. However, Prince, who has never done this before, nibbled on a neighbor's hand as he was passing by, and he did draw blood. And the neighbor is not very happy about it, which we certainly understand. The guardians are taking it very, very seriously. That's why they hired me to come in and evaluate the dog. I don't interpret him as being an aggressive dog at any capacity. He, I think, is confused about what is appropriate to put his hands on. He mouths his guardians a little bit inside, and I think he was a little confused. And it might have been, I didn't see the incident, but it could have been that he was a little bit keyed up. There was a lawn blower, or he hadn't been exercised. That was the first time he exercised that day, or there was another dog or something nearby, or he had a cold. There could be a lot of little things that could have contributed to it. But he didn't latch on, he didn't attack the person. So, but the guardians are, again, obviously very concerned about this. The first time they've had a dog that nips and bites, and they want to make sure that does not happen again. So we went over rules and structure. Like I said, they have most of those things in place, but I did add, fill in a couple of gaps. I also went over my petting with a purpose and my passive training philosophy. Petting with a purpose is simply, anytime we pet our dog, we're paying the dog for doing what he's doing. And I think the guardians at times were petting the dogs when they were nervous or scared. That's a very common thing that a lot of humans do. Or excited, or unbalanced states of mind. But remember, anything your dog is doing when you pet it is what you're reinforcing, including these unbalanced states of mind. So if your dog's fearful, you're going to make it more fearful. Slightly, but over and over, it really adds up. Now, you can touch your dog and let your dog know I'm here with you without amplifying it. But if you pet it, you're reinforcing. This also includes like excitement. Now in the video above, we went over how to teach your dog how to calm down by not doing anything, basically by not engaging with the dog. So if you have a dog that jumps up or gets overexcited, you can use the technique that's above and it'll help. And the guardians should practice that with each other. Now also we have guests come over, we could practice the same thing. Size up the leash, and you might want to even put a piece of tape down on the floor so the guest comes in. Just say, look, all I want you to do is put your side to this tape and just wait. And as soon as the dog settles down and sits or sits, turn to engage with them, and as soon as he gets excited, turn to the side. Let me see, for petting with a purpose, if the dog tells me what to do, nudges me or leans on me or barks at me or whatever, and I pet it, I'm telling the dog it can tell me it has authority over me. So what I do instead is next time that Prince leans on the guardian, instead of petting him, they should say sit. When he sits, they should pet him under his chin and say just the word sit, not good sit. A lot of times we caveman talk to our dog. Good sit, go potty, bad this. The first word is the most important. First sound is the most thing that they're going to focus on. So we want to say just the first word. After a while, what the dog's going to learn is I can't tell humans what to do. I tell them what to do, nothing happens. But now if they tell me what to do and I do it, I get a payoff. I get a reward. So I'm inclined and I have an incentive to listen. After a while, the dogs will come start sitting in front of the guardians to prepay for attention. And make sure when he does that, we do recognize and reward that. Now, that leaves me in what I call passive training. Passive training is rewarding the dog every time it does desired actions or behaviors voluntarily. So every time that one of the dogs comes to you, we should pet it and say, come. Every time it sits, we pet it and say, sit, down, etc., etc. You can even teach your dog how to train, bring special toys, although we don't have a lot of toys in this house because Prince is a power chewer. Okay, so let me see. Passive training and petting with a purpose are by far the easiest things that any dog guardian can do that will have the biggest impact on the dog, but you have to get in the habit of doing it. It's going to take the humans about a month to get in the habit of doing that. Now, I have a couple watchwords for these. So I say paycheck if paycheck means I suspect you may have forgotten to pet with a purpose. So I walk in the room, see someone's petting the dog, it's standing, I say paycheck. They stop petting, tell the dog to sit. When it sits, they pet him on the chin, say sit again, and then say, it's time to sit. Before you came in the room, you didn't see it. Don't argue about it because that tells the dogs you're on your own page. We want to be on the same page. The dog needs to come onto our page. And then I say testify or recognize reward if the dog is doing something that I missed. So if somebody says testify to me, I look at the dog standing there, I assume he just came, I just pet him and start saying come, just narrate. Don't ask, because you only have 3 seconds. You've already, by the time they tell you, you only have 1 second left. If it's sitting, pet him and say sit. The more that we pet dogs for desired actions and behaviors, the more the dogs will emulate them. Right now, I think the guardians probably have conditioned the dogs somewhat to offer some behaviors that we don't like. Now, we also need to make sure we're cognizant of both dogs. We have an older dog here, Zeus, who was just here. And he's an older dog, and he kind of is really deferring to Prince, because Prince is a strong dog. Prince is not being aggressive towards him at all, but Prince is trying to take the first position, to go out the door first. He won't let him go through, I say let him, but he doesn't want it to, he's more of a passive dog. I don't think it's so much Prince being aggressive at all. Yeah, I think it's just, he's just, Zeus's nature is to be more of a follower. But we need to also intercede, and sometimes there's some jealousy that comes up. The guardians are petting Zeus, and Prince will come up and say he wants some of that. Like a lot of guardians, they'll pet both dogs. That allows the second dog to steal from the first dog. So what we might do is tag team, because there's 2 guardians here. If I'm petting Zeus and Prince starts to come up, the second guardian could use the third escalating consequence, get up and start marching at Prince and make Prince stay out of the area while we continue petting Zeus. And then once we get done petting Zeus, we can call Prince in the area if we feel inclined. Only if Prince doesn't protest. If Prince tries to protest and come around, I'm not going to give you any interest, because I'm not going to reward you for undesired actions and behaviors or petulance. Let me see. I'd like the guardians to start an exercise journal, and feel free to put your knees on your thighs. This might be a long one. An exercise journal, we write down the date at the top, and then we write a name of each dog on the page, and we write the time and the number of exercises. How long the fetch was, how many fetches, how long the walks were, if we played with the laser or whatever it was, scent games. And then also, anytime that there's a dust up or a problem, or the dog does offers some behavior we don't want, we're going to write down the time and as much detail about that as possible. If there is another nibbling incident, which I don't see happening, because the guardians are going so out of their way to make sure that he doesn't have the opportunity to do it, which is a great prophylactic approach to use. But if there is something, he barks at a construction guy or whatever it was, and it's out of the normal, write down the time and then the details for that as well. That way we can have a little bit more detail, and after a couple weeks we can start looking and seeing trends. Hey, every time I don't get the dog this much exercise, he destroys the dog bed, or whatever it is. And then we can start working in more exercise and structure to prevent the dog from getting to the point where it needs to do that. Now, for the dog beds, I recommend the guardians go to the elevated dog beds. They make some out of metal, and they make some out of PVC. They're kind of like, looks like, I can't remember the exercise position, but they're round and they go like this. It's like almost a hammock. It's netting in between. So that might help, because right now it's kind of a bummer for Zeus, because Prince destroys both dog beds, and now Zeus doesn't have anywhere to sleep outside. So if we get those elevated ones, they wouldn't be as good at chewing. That might be something where the dogs actually have those and we don't get them chewing. Now, if we do have those and they do chew those or other dog beds, make sure that we're going to practice that. I'm going to talk about how we should teach the dog to leave it. Well, we actually went over that, but I'll talk about it a little bit here. But if we're practicing with the dog, we might want to set the dog up and put the dog in a scenario where we have a security camera that's in the dog room, and the guardian pretends like he's going to the gym, because that's what causes Prince to want to destroy him. And then he can park his car at the end of the street, sneak back and watch on the security camera. And as soon as Prince starts licking the dog bed, licking is usually a precursor to chewing. As soon as he starts licking it, the guardian can come in and give him a leave it command and make him leave the area. Dog's like, "Bloop. Normally I heard the car leave. How did you come back here from the gym so fast?" Well, we're creating staged scenarios so we can help the dog practice, and we're monitoring, supervising, and interceding when necessary. Let me see. So for the exercise journal, write down all those details, and then at the end of the day, write an A through F grade for each dog, and then vary the exercise. Now, Zeus is an older dog. He's not going to need as much exercise as Prince is going to need. And so once we find out what each dog needs, then we can get it to him proactively and prevent them. And exercise for dogs is usually best done sprinkled throughout the day. One long walk in the morning is not going to be good for the whole day. It'll be good for the morning, but when you get to midday, you're going to need more exercise. The guardians should teach the dog to fetch, but in order to do that, we have to go teach the dog to drop first and to leave it. And we're going to go through those here in a sec. Well, actually, I got some right here. For the walk, let's talk about the walk first. The guardians, because he's done that on Prince did that on a walk, they don't want to walk him outside, because they just don't want to take any chances. And so one of the things I recommend that they might want to do is practice walking in the backyard. We don't want to use, the Guardians were using a prong collar, and that could be a contributing factor to the problem. That causes pain and and it traces stress on the dog. Those are illegal in every country except for the United States. If you use a prong collar, ask yourself, do you want your dog to listen to you because it fears punishment or because you taught it how you want to behave? So if we actually start practicing walking in the backyard on the leash using a regular collar, a martingale, whatever we want to use, a non-pain inducing collar, we are in a controlled environment. The Guardians aren't going to feel stressed or worried about somebody that's going to come up and do the wrong thing and the dog getting startled. I think there's probably a little overboard, but it's better for the Guardians to be overboard than underboard. And so, they're being responsible, which we like. So one of the things we could do is when we do get to the point where we're going back to on walks, we can do things to put the dog in a position to succeed. We can get the dog some exercise by playing fetch in the backyard, or practicing walking a couple laps in the backyard, or doing things along those lines, doing some scent games, using a dog backpack and all the rest of that fun stuff. Burn off the dog's excess energy, and then go for a walk and time it during the day, which is what the Guardians do the few times they do walk. They make sure that they walk at times where they're going to run into as few people as possible. But if we completely isolate the dog and avoid everybody, we're not going to teach the dog how to develop new behaviors. So we might need to set up a follow-up session to do some behavior adjustment training or things along those lines. But usually that's for dogs that are being aggressive. And again, what I'm not seeing an aggressive dog. I'm seeing, I think, probably a confused dog that mouths somebody and the person might have pulled their hand away. And sometimes the fangs will rip the skin and it's not really a bite. I didn't see it. I don't know if that might not have happened. But I'm not seeing, and I've worked with a lot of aggressive dogs, so I'm not seeing the indicators with him that I see with other dogs. But if we do deplete his excess energy, and eating the dog beds could be a sign of separation anxiety, it could also be on board. And so if we get a little bit more excess energy and we practice walking the backyard, the Guardians feel comfortable about it, the dog can practice, and I give them some tricks. Remember to practice the U-turn and do 2 of those. Message me if you forget how to do those. And if we want, we might set up some loose leash training for the dog so we can actually teach them to walk with a loose leash. I don't pull, and I think the Guardians were pulling a lot on the leash, and dogs have an opposition reflex. The more you pull, the more the dog will continue to pull. So we want to keep the leash there because it's the law, and in case of emergency, but the leash should not be what gets your dog in the heel or in the walk or under control. You should teach the dog how to do that. And practice in the backyard is a great way to do that. All right, now the Guardians, I think, had commingled drop and leave it, which are 2 separate exercises. Drop is simply drop whatever you have in your mouth, and leave it is don't pick the thing up in the first place. So for the drop, what we want to do is when the dog has what we call a low-value item, and I'm going to talk about toys in a sec because he destroys just about everything Prince does. And when he has something, he's already, and don't do this with a new toy. Let him have it and get bored with it. And then when he has something he's allowed to have, or maybe the rope toy, or something he's not particularly strong or strong attraction to, take a chicken liver treat or warm chicken from like Chipotle or something like that, and hold it up against the dog's nose and don't say a darn thing. Just hold it there. He'll try to take it with the object in his mouth, and he'll figure out he can't do that. When he drops it, we ignore the item. And we do this, like I said, with the lowest value item that we can in the house. If we try to pick it up, then it becomes a higher value item. So what we do is we hold the treat there, and as soon as the dog drops it, we pop the treat in their mouth, or the chicken, and we say drop. And we do not go for the object. The dog's like, and a lot of times they go pick it up again. Great, gives them the other opportunity to pull on another piece of chicken and drop it. Keep doing this, and don't show any interest in the object. And once we do it with the lowest value item, then we do it with the next value item, higher and higher, and practice this inside, outside, all sorts of different places. Eventually you get to the point where you could say, you come up with the dog has something, you hold the chicken out, it's spitting it out right away. And then the next step will be you'll be able to say drop, the dog drops it, then you present the chicken. But right now, in the second stage is we're going to present the chicken as the first and second stage to lure the dog to drop it. But after a while, we want to do it on a verbal command only. And we never, ever want to try to take something away from the dog's mouth, especially a dog that might potentially have a resource guarding issue. The dog curls up his lips when the Guardian tries to take things from him. They haven't done it because he's a big dog, he's got a big mouth. But we want to, again, teach him to voluntarily drop. Again, we don't want to force the dog to do anything. That's really my mantra with everything. We want to teach the dog to do it and want to do it. So if we teach it now, I'm happy to I get chicken and then I get my object every time, happy to do it. Now, eventually, if he does have something he's not allowed to have, we give him the chicken, or give him the drop command, he drops, so we give him a chicken, and we might pull out a bully stick or something else and give him something equal or greater value if we do have to take the item away. But that should be the exception, not the rule. Now, the leave it exercise is actually teaching the dog not to pick it up in the ground in the first place. I didn't really go through that with the Guardians. They've taught it. If you want, send me a message. I can send you a link to a YouTube video that shows you how to teach the dog using a clicker to look up at you, and then eventually to, you can hold the treat in your hand. You wait for the dog to back off. You give it to, then you give him a different treat. Then you put it on the floor, and you gradually work up to it. Again, starting with the lowest, easiest level, and gradually working our way back up to the hard level, or more the real world scenario. Let me see, what else? Also, once they've done the drop and the leave it, then they're ready to practice the fetch. Now, when I play fetch, I say fetch 3 times. As I throw the object, I say fetch. When the dog picks the object up, I say fetch. And then when the dog comes and brings it back to me, I wait for it. I hold the treat in front of their mouth. Now, if I have a strong drop command, the dog should be used to doing that. If it doesn't, I just say drop it. When it drops it, I would pop the treat in its mouth, but this time I would say fetch. And then I would pick the object up. Don't snatch it. Snatching implies I don't think I can have it. Picking it up like this is it's mine. I don't have to rush. And then you tell the dog to sit and then throw it again. Again, looking for ways to delay gratification, waiting for permission to eat their food or going out the door or whatever it is. If you're playing fetch, sit, wait for that dog to sit and then throw it. Or sit and then wait 5 seconds and 10 seconds eventually, 15. Gradually build it up so the dog has to play the game by your rules, and your rules require the dog to develop and practice a little bit of self-control. Which also helps deepen the respect for the relationship of the leader-follower dynamic of the human being in charge. Oh, let's see what. For the backyard, I forgot to go over the sit walk. So one of the things I'd like the Guardian to do is they're walking around the backyard. And they could do this on walks out in front, but it'd probably be best to start and practice and shape the behavior in the backyard. But have a bunch of high-value treats. Take 1 to 5 steps. And somewhere in those number of steps, you're going to stop whenever you want, chaotically. And as soon as the dog, you stop, tell the dog to sit. Use the treat as a lure if you need to. When the dog sits, pop it in its mouth, say the word sit, take a couple steps, and then stop again. So create a loop, a couple laps in different directions that you go in your backyard, and practice. So the dog's like, after a while, the dog's looking at the human to see, and when you stop, the dog sits automatically. That's when I would start transition to doing this. I would do a warm-up walk here, and fetch or whatever it is, and then take him for the actual walk, and then practice that again as you're walking out every 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 steps. As we do that, we get better and better at this, and the dog eventually, like I said, stops and is able to practice stopping and ignoring and filtering out distractions. Now, the dog does not like having, they've moved to a halty collar, and the dog does not like having the halty placed on. Now, I have a video, I'd like you to watch my video, but there's actually another video by Gene Donaldson that actually shows you how to actually create a conditioned emotional response, or a CER, of how to put the halty on. Now, if you want to watch mine, just go to dogconproblems.com and search for Samson. It's a big golden doodle I just worked with about a week ago. He didn't like having the collar put on, and I show you how to create a conditioned emotional response. Gene Donaldson's video, and she's a lot more accomplished than I am, and she actually shows how to get your dog to stick its nose into a halty. So her name is JeanDonaldson, I believe, and just so Gene Donaldson CER or Gene Donaldson Conditioned Emotional Response, watch that video. It's not very, she likes using a lot of like baby talk to dogs, which I really abhor, but she's amazingly accomplished and she teaches a lot of great stuff. So that one, you might want to have the dog walker and the Guardians watch that and practice that. And you're just showing the dog the deal and then picking it and then giving it a treat and taking it away, and you're doing it back and forth. And after a while, the dog has a positive association with the collar. Okay, so the sit walks in the backyard and then our walks are great because eventually we stop and the dog just sits down automatically, and people are like, oh my God, your dog is so well behaved. You're like, of course, I hired David from Doggone Problems and he showed us how to teach our dog to behave the way we want. Okay, scent games. I'm not going to go through those here. The Guardians can Google scent games for dogs. There's all sorts of different things for dogs to do, and it makes them use their brain. So you can actually hide treats around the living room, or specific targets, or find the humans, and that's draining because it makes the dogs use their memory or their brain, which is very draining for just as it does for us to do taxes or something very, very mentally taxing. All right, let me see. Warning signs. One of the things the Guardians might want to do is when they are walking, is have somebody else walk and follow with a video and filming the dog. I prefer to film from behind so I can see the dog in the foreground and the person in the background, or in the whatever that is. But what I like to do is look for the warning signs. Now, typical warning signs, I'm going to run through some of the basic ones, but you might find your dog does some other things that we videotape it, we can watch it later, we can slow it down and watch it over and over again and identify what our exact dog's warning signs are. Usually the first warning sign is a stare, often with the lowered head. Now I can stare like this, or I can stare like this. I'm looking at the camera, but I'm not looking a direct look. That's even more of a warning for a dog. Ears rotating forward can be a warning. Licking of the lips is a sign of stress or anxiety. Dilated pupils also can be stress or anxiety. Drooling, pretty obvious. Dry panting. Now that's going to be hard to tell because he's a big dog and this is Southern California, and even though it's April, even during the wintertime, it's pretty warm out here. So if he's panting before, then that might not be one you look at. Hackles going up. He's not a big hackles dog, but watch for those, the hair on the spine. Tail going up. Tail goes straight up or is going really quickly. Those are also warning signs. Turning the head to the side and yawning can be a calming signal, or it can be a sign that I'm stressed out. If the other dog goes like this can be a point. This can also be a way of saying please, or it can be a way of saying I'm inviting you to come and say hello. So if you do see that from the other dog, that's a good sign. Also, the other dog is going to depend. If we see like a bunch of kids and they're going all crazy, that's going to make the dog a little bit more nervous than a kid who's walking very calmly. Same thing with dogs. So take into account what your dog is looking at. And also, a lot of us do a poor job of recognizing that our dog's giving these warning signs, and we're walking down the street and we're going to walk next to another dog that's walking towards us. Our thought process, I'm going to pass this dog. Your dog thinks you're walking me closer and closer to this dangerous situation. My humans are not listening to me. I have a fight or flight response, and the leash prevents me from flighting. The human's forcing me to go towards him. I'm going to have to act tough and aggressive to move the other dog or person away. So we want to listen to our dog, and when our dog shows us those signs, we're going to take a right and go down somebody's driveway, walk around a car, stop and let the other dog pass us. Remember, the goal is not to help the dog not practice those unwanted behaviors. The more we pay attention to our dog and recognize our dog's warning signs, then the dog has more trust in us that we're not going to put them in a dangerous situation. Okay, let me see what else. Mouthing. The guardians, the dog does like nibble or mouth at times inside, not a lot, but anytime the dog's teeth touch you, even if it's accidental, really high pitch voice, and then we freeze. And if the dog does it a second time, I would do a negative punishment, which is to leave the room and close the door behind you. Wait for the dog to stop protesting or settle down for a couple seconds before you come back in the room. When you come back in the room, it's over. Don't go back to doing what you're doing. But we're teaching the dog, if you touch me with the skin, it hurts me. Even though it's accidental, even though it's minor, we want the dog to learn good bite inhibition. Under no circumstances can I put my mouth on a human at all. And especially with Prince's issue, that's something the guardians want to do. That's the primary, they're really their primary focus. Let me see. The other thing is once the dog learns and it's no longer nibbling on us or mouthing us under any capacity, the guardian has pull toys, and those are great ways to help the dog develop more bite inhibition. First, we want to understand and communicate any touch creates pain or an outburst from the human, but after a while, we want to actually do the tugging. And then that is going to put the dog in more proximity to actually doing that accidentally. And when it does, we yelp and stop playing. And again, we'll go inside if we need to. But the more that we do those things, we help the dog develop that bite inhibition, and the dog understands, I just can't put my mouth on people. Let me see, what else? Toys. The dogs, because Prince basically destroys everything that he gets into his mouth, the guardians really are kind of at a loss of what to get him. I would recommend getting some nylobones they already recognize. Get a whole bunch of those different sizes. Most people get the ones that just look like cartoon bones. You can get a chicken, I have one that's a forearm, one that's a donut, and there are different flavors. So to get a whole bunch of variety of those. Also get real bones. The bone should probably be about that long. It should be hollow. And you can get some with marrow or peanut butter or different stuff in there. You can get them at Petco or PetSmart. They're boiled. There's nothing there. But the sides of the bone are pretty thick. Now, pit bulls can chew pretty. And if you start seeing a lot of chips coming off, you might want to take that away. But I'm guessing that'll probably be fine for him. And we can also fill up that bone with peanut butter. Guardians have been using Kongs, but they were only putting a little bit of peanut butter at the top as a cap. We want to fill that sucker up with peanut butter, one meat treat at the bottom or two. Let me see, other things, water buffalo tusks, wonderful for big dogs. Make sure they are solid and they're not hollow, like a horn, or he'll splinter them and it won't be worth it. Also antlers, for a dog his size, I would say get some elk antlers, really big, they're really durable, and they'll start out this big, and after a while it'll be this big. They'll gnaw them down, that's okay. It also puts a cap on their teeth, these hard things, and so fangs won't be quite as sharp, which is beneficial in a dog like Prince. Let me see, the Kong ball, the guardians already identified. Getting a Kong ball works. Lacrosse balls are great as well, but they're a little bit smaller, and some dogs, people worry about them going down the dog's throat. That's kind of a personal choice based on what your dog and what you see out of your dog. Let me see. So yeah, those are some great ideas for that. Also feeding. The guardians have been letting the dogs feed at the same time. Now they make them wait to feed, but dogs eat in the order of their rank. And because Zeus is the senior dog, I would let Zeus eat first with Prince not in the room. But the first eater needs to be the human that's feeding. And a smoothie does not work, coffee does not count. So for a dog, it's got to be physical food. So get a carrot or a chip or a cracker or a piece of celery. I prefer something crunchy, but anything you can eat in 5 or more bites. Then invite Zeus in. And we might, because Prince might sometimes tries to block Zeus by being in the first position, we might actually invite Zeus in the room, in the dog room, and close the door, prepare the food, and then open the door and kind of stand there in the doorway so that the dog outside Prince can see me eating, sees that Zeus is inside, and when I get done eating, I give Zeus permission to eat, and use passive training to give each dog a unique command word. So every time Zeus eats, maybe we say Ziti, or what, you can say any word you want, but come up with something funny, and that's his word. When he hears Ziti, there's food in his mouth. When Prince hears Ziti, there's no food in his mouth, so it doesn't mean the same thing to him. After a while, you can just say Ziti, and he'll go and eat. Now, eventually, we'd like to get to the point where we don't have to block the dog out of the room, and I think the more that we enforce not allowing, because I think there are times where, like I said, we're petting Zeus and Prince comes up, or Prince comes and parks himself in front of the human to block Zeus from getting there. Now that the humans know to look out for that and make him move away, Zeus should start coming, I don't say coming out of his shell, but feel a little bit more confident. And also seeing that the humans are not allowing him near me when I'm eating food. We don't want him rushing to eat his food, and to be within 7 feet of a human's eating is a challenge for their food, or anybody who's eating, dog or food. Dog or human, which is why I told the guardians it's one of the rules: the dog shouldn't be in the kitchen while we're preparing food or while we're eating any food. Let me see. I think that's just about it. Zeus, come. He's like, I just laid down in my kennel. Can't I come and a little bit later on? No, I need you. I need a good Zeus. Now that slow movement, he's a little bit probably old, but there we go. This is Zeus, and Prince is outside, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.